सहनावतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्परां। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पाद शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं। शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणम् सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः। श्रीचिन्मययतीशस्य गुरुं वन्दे तपोवनं तं हिमवद्विभूतिं वै ज्ञानवैराग्यरूपिणं समस्तजनकल्याणे निरतं करुणामयम् नमामि चिन्मयं देवं सद्गुरुं ब्रह्मविद्वरं सद्गुरुं ब्रह्मविद्वरम्। ॐ श्री गणेशाय नमः। ॐ श्री सरस्वत्यै नमः। ॐ श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः। ॐ भद्रं कर्णेभिः शृणुयाम देवाः भद्रं पश्येमाक्षभिर्यजत्राः स्थिरैरङ्गैस्तुष्टुवागंसस्तनूभिः व्यशेम देवहितं यदायुः। स्वस्ति न इन्द्रो वृद्धश्रवाः स्वस्ति नः पूषा विश्ववेदाः स्वस्ति नस्तार्क्ष्यो अरिष्टनेमिः स्वस्ति नो बृहस्पतिर्दधातु। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्ति। Hari Om, my humble pranams to you all. So in the Prasnopanishad, we have finished the first query out of the 6 students. And the main points in this verse, Srishti, 4 kinds of Srishtis we saw. One is Praja Srishti, which is Prana and Rai. Then we saw Kala Srishti, how time manifested as Samvatsara, as the whole year with Uttarayana and Dakshinayana. And then the Masa, the 2 phases of the moon, Shukla and Krishna Paksha. Shukla is when the moon is brightening and Krishna is when it is darkening. And then after that, we also saw Anna Srishti. And we also saw the day, how the daytime is meant for active energy and the nighttime is meant for rest and relaxation. So we covered those 4 Srishtis. And then we covered Anna Srishti, how Anna is produced by Prajapati in the form of the sun and the moon, which nourish all the plants, which Bhagavan also says in the 15th chapter, that I am the one that nourishes the plants as the sun and the moon. And then we saw Aham Vaish, and then also as the digestive fire, I digest it. And then we saw Mithuna Srishti, how the male and the female get together to create the new being. And so everything is Prajapati. Prajapati is the Prana and Rai. Prajapati means the Lord. He is the time. He is the mother and the father, and Annam. And using Annam, the mother and the father are nourished, and the new being is born. So the child, every one of us, is nothing but a manifestation of Prajapati. That's Supreme Lord who is functioning as the creator of the universe. And then we also saw the two paths, the solar and the lunar paths, Uttarayana and Dakshinayana. The solar path, one who follows with karma and upasana, goes beyond heaven to the Brahma Loka, from where he then continues his path towards Krama Mukti. And then in the lunar path, which is the path of good activities, but done with the desire for heaven, then they go to heaven, which is called the Chandra Loka or Swarga. And then they come back to continue their journey. And we also saw the gati of the jiva. What is the ultimate goal of that jiva is oneness or enlightenment, which will be a theme throughout this Upanishad. And also various upasanas. We had studied different kinds of upasanas, which will be again covered in more detail in subsequent mantras of this Upanishad. So before we start the second query, the second question, there are a few points, kind of, how shall I say, background that one should know, which most of us know, but it is good to revise. All of this universe is a combination of Atma and Anatma. And we all are also. Atma means the consciousness, and Anatma is the matter, the five elements: air, space, fire, water, earth. The elements are inert, and so they cannot create anything, right? Atma by itself is akarta, abhokta. Atma doesn't do anything. So how does creation come about? When Atma functions through Anatma, through this five elements, it enlivens them, and that's how the whole universe is created. Gurudev gives a beautiful example of electricity and bulb. Electricity by itself cannot give light. The bulb, of course, cannot give light. But when electricity functions through the bulb, then light is produced. And so as this world we see, this infinite variety, even though it's only Atma and Anatma, five elements, and consciousness. Why do we see the infinite variety? Because of the three gunas, sattva, rajas, and tamas. And we have studied them in the Bhagavad Gita quite exhaustively. And also we had studied that there are three bodies: the gross body, the subtle body, and the causal body. Now, if I ask you which one of these is most important, the causal body is the karana sharira, the cause, and the gross and subtle bodies are the effect. So which one is most important? People will say causal, right? Because it is the cause. But the scriptures tell us that the causal body is unmanifest. It's not functioning. Once the jiva is created, the causal body goes into the unmanifest state. And the gross body, of course, is totally dependent. So they say it is the subtle body that is the most important in our functioning in this world. The causal body is necessary for realization, to exhaust the vasanas. But all our activities in this world are because of the subtle body. In fact, the consciousness reflects in the subtle body, then only the jiva functions. And the subtle body consists of 19 elements. That was covered in Tattva Bodha, but we'll just summarize: 5 pranas, 5 sense organs, 5 organs of action make 15, and then the 4 antakaranas, mana, buddhi, chit, ahankar. And our abilities are due to the functioning ability, not the actual sense organs have no ability. The eyes have no ability to see, ears, they are just holes, as Gurudev says. They are essential for seeing and hearing, but by itself, they don't have the ability to see or hear, because when the individual dies, when the subtle body leaves, the 19 elements plus vasanas plus ignorance, 21, when they leave, the eyes are still there, the ears are still there, the nose is still there, but the individual has no ability to see, hear, smell, taste, and touch, and of course, move around and all. So these 5 sense organs and 5 organs of action are the ability to see, hear, smell, taste, touch, move, grasp, taste, and so on. And so these experiencer is the subtle body, and all these sense organs feed this mind and intellect, which is part of the antakarna. The mind receives it, presents it to the intellect, and the intellect, based on previous memory, will act, and actions can only happen when the ego is there. So antakarna, mana, buddhi, chitta, ahankar. And each one of these abilities, 19, have devas. Devas are the luminous factors. We'll talk more about them today. The devas are the abilities to see, hear, smell, taste, and touch. And each deva has its own portfolio. So the deva of the eyes is different from the deva of the ears, the deva of the hands, feet, and so on. Not only that, but there are upapranas, like the ability to yawn, the ability to wink. So there are upapranas and there are devas for all of them. So then person can say, I didn't get angry. It's not my fault. The deva of anger made me get angry. So they say, no, what happens is that it is like when you build a house, you go to the electricity, the water, the sewer, you get all the connections. Once you have the connections, then how much electricity, how much water you use, how you use depends on you. Then the electricity company or the water company is not responsible. So the devas are the ones that give us the ability, but then they say, now it's up to you how you use your ability to see, hear, smell, taste, and touch. And now today we will talk about prana, because prana is the one that is active in deep sleep. In deep sleep, it is prana alone that is active. The gross body goes to sleep, the subtle body goes to sleep, the causal body, of course, is unmanifest, but it is the prana. And so this particular second query is related to the functioning of prana. So we'll start with the first mantra of the second query. Kerry, would you like to repeat? Athahainam Bhargavo Vaidarbhihi Papracha Bhagwan Katyeva Deva Praja Vidharayante Katara Etat Prakashayante Kaf Punaresham Varishtha iti. All together. Atha hainam bhargavo vaidarbhihi papracha bhagavan katyeva devaha raja vidharayante kataretat prakashayante kaf punaresham varishtha iti. So the second student, we don't know his name, but he is said to be Bhargavo. Bhargavo means he belongs to the Kula of Bhrigu Rishi. So he was a descendant of Bhrigu Rishi from very noble lineage. And he was from Vidarbha province. There's still a province in India called Vidarbha. So this student was called Bhargavo Vaidarbhihi. Atha, now the next topic is there. Atha means the next topic. Here, her indeed enam. Enam means to his guru, Pippalada Rishi, Bhargava Vaidarbhi Papracha. He asked. What did he ask? Bhagwan. He is respectfully addressing the teacher as Bhagwan because that is the reverence they have for the guru. Kati eva deva praja vidharayante. Kati means how many, eva means only, deva. Deva means, devas means the illumining factors because deva means to illumine. So deva means the illumining powers which illumine all the abilities in the body. How many are there which praja vidharayante, which support this entire praja? Vidharayante means the adhara. The word adhara has come from that. So that which supports this whole creation, not only humans, but all beings. And a katara etat prakashayante, and how many devas actually illumine. So one is sustain and one is illumine. That means give life. Sustain is to create, and then illumine is to give life. Katara etat prakashayante, and kaha out of them, punara then esham out of them varishtha iti, who is the greatest, who is the supreme. So now the student's question is becoming subtler, as we will see in the 6 questions. First one was the gross creation. We saw that, how the creation. Now he's going inward as to who is the illumining factor and who among them is the greatest. So as we know, there is Adhyatmik, Adi Bhautik, and Adi Daivik. So most of us live at these 2 levels, Adhyatmik level, my, and Adi Bhautik, the world. But very few people think about the Adi Daivik, which is the celestial powers, which is the Lord himself functioning through them. So it is the consciousness that functions through the devas. The devas are we think of devas when we see the serial, as these beings roaming around wearing golden crowns and Varun Devta and Indra Devta and all. But they are actually the illumining forces. And here the student wants to know the cause and the effect. What is the cause of this creation? To some extent was covered in the first mantra, and the effect. But how does this entire universe function? And who among them is the greatest, the most supreme? Because there is always an argument, we'll see in the next mantra how each one of the senses thinks I am most important. Eyes think I am most important, ears think I am most, and there is always an argument. So talking about argument, these 3 boys were arguing, and one says, my father is the fastest. He said, why? He said he won the Olympics 100 meters. He ran in 9.5 seconds. So he's the fastest in the world, the fastest human being. Other one said, this is nothing. My father is the fastest. He's a fighter pilot, and he could fly the jet at 2,000 miles per hour, 3 times the speed of sound. He is the fastest. Third one said, what are you guys talking? My father is the fastest. So he said, what does he do? They say, he's a congressman. He's a senator. So they say, how can he be the fastest? He says, well, he works till 5 p.m. every day, but he's home by 12 noon. So he's the fastest. He can even beat time. So similarly, we always argue who is the greatest. Kaha punaresha Varishtha iti. So there's not much discussion in this mantra. There is only question. So we'll go to the second mantra. Lata, you may please chant.
Okay.
Tasmai sahovacha
Tasmai sahovacha
akasho hava esha devo
akasho hava esha devo
vayuragniरापः
vayuragnirapaha
prithvi vangmanaschakshuः
prithivi vang manas chakshuhu
श्रोत्रञ्च
shotrancha
ते प्रकाशयाभिवदन्ति
te prakashaya bhivadanti
वयमेतद्बाणम्
vayametat vanam
अवष्टभ्य विधार्यामः.
avastabhya vidarayamaha.
Together. Tasmai sahovacha akasho hava esha devo vayuragnirapaha prithvi vangmanaschakshuhu shrotrancha te prakashaya bhivadanti vayam banam avashtabhya vidharyamaha. So tasmai, so to that student, sa means the guru, Pipalada Rishi. Indeed, uvacha. So very clearly he is telling and very correctly. So he says, akasho hava esha devaha. So space is one of these devas. Then Vayu, Agni, Apa, Prithvi. So there are 5 devas: space, air, fire, water, and earth. And so these 5 are mentioned. These are the 5 devas. And Vang, Mana, Chakshu, Shrotram. So by mentioning these 4, he has mentioned all the elements. That means Vang represents speech. So all the organs of action are represented in speech: hands, feet, speech, reproductive and excretory organs. Mana represents antakarna, mind, intellect, ego, ahankar. And chakshu shrotram represents the sense organs: eyes, ears, nose, skin, and tongue. So these are the 5, the 5 sense organs, 5 organs of action, and the 4 antakaranas. Prana has not been mentioned here yet. Shrotam, these 14, te prakashaya, having illumined this body, the eyes, the ears, the mind, intellect. Abhivadanti, they start fighting with each other, these 14 of them. Vayam etad banam avashtabhya. So one says, I do it. Other one says, I do it. So vayam means we support etad banam, this body, avashtabhya, supporting, and vidharayamaha, we sustain. So they say, without me, the body cannot function. The mind says, the intellect says, the eyes say, the ears say, they all start fighting with themselves and they get into conflict. So we have talked about the 5 senses. Now, who is the presiding deity? Like space is the presiding deity of sound, because sound travels through space. So my ability to hear the deva is space. Air is the ability to touch. So touch, my sense of touch, or the skin, the deva is air. And fire represents sun, the ability to see form and color. So the deva of the eyes is fire. Water is the deva of taste, because without water, if it's dry, the food doesn't taste good. So water is the ability of taste, and earth is the ability to smell. That's why when there is rainfall, you can smell the earth. So space, air, fire, water, earth are the five devas of the five senses. And then each one of them is important. Suppose there is no sunlight, of course, the world will not be there. But even if I don't go out in the sun, what will happen? I'll get vitamin D deficiency, and the doctor will say you need to take more vitamin D. So we need to get enough sunlight, or not drinking enough water. All those fire, the heat is important for digestion. So all those are the devas of the sense organs. But people say, I don't believe in all this deva, shiva and all. Yeah, it's all just some bunk. Some rishi sitting somewhere in the Himalayas. He had nothing better to do, so he came out with these devas. No, they say you have to have Shraddha, because
even
science is saying that there are abilities, and we'll talk a little bit about that also in the next mantra. But the mantras of these Upanishads have a lot of power. In fact, if we hear about like Tansen and so on, he could chant Malkhoun's mantra and actually make rain come. Or chanting Deepika mantra, he could actually create fire. So our rishis had these mantras with the abilities to do that. And the devas are the sentient principles. As we said, the body is inert, but the sentient principle is the devas, which are the illumining factors. But we think, I am most important. I am the roof and crown of creation. Human beings think that. And so we can use nature as we want. We don't live in harmony with nature. And that's why we have destroyed so many species, have been wiped out with global warming. So much, damage is being done. So they say one needs to live life in conjunction with nature, in harmony with nature. That's why Stephen Hawking said that if we continue the way we are, Stephen Hawking is a great physicist in England. He said in 100 years, there will be no human beings. We will wipe ourselves out in 100 years. So that's why this Upanishad deals a lot with nature and how it gives us the abilities. So now we'll go to mantra number 3. Sharad, would you like to chant? Tan varishtha pranuvacha.
Tan varishtha prana uvacha.
Ma moham apadyatha.
Ma moham apadyatham.
Aham evaitat.
Aham evaitat.
Panchadhatmanam.
Panchadatmanam.
Pravibhajya.
Pravipajya.
Etadubana.
Etatubana.
Banam.
Banam.
Avashtabhya.
Avashtabhya.
Vidharayamiti.
Vidarayamiti.
Te shraddhana.
Te shraddhadana.
Babhuvaha.
Babhuvaha.
Together. Tan varishtha pranuvacha. Ma mohamapadyatha. Aham evaitat panchadhatmanam. Pravibhajya. Aitad banam avashtabhya. Vidharayamiti. Te shraddhana babhuvaha. Babhuvuhu. I think they have babhuvuhu, yes. So tan varishtha. So to these 14 elements, prana, which is the 5 pranas, but here it is the mukhya prana, the head of all the pranas, uvacha. Varishtha, he is the highest. He spoke. What did he say? Ma moham apadya. Do not come in delusion. Atha aham evai tat panchadha. Having become 5. Aham eva, I alone, having become 5. Atmanam pravibhajya, having split myself into five. Atmanam pravibhajya means myself I have split into five. The Mukhya Prana says I have split into five. Etad Vanam avashtabhya. I am the one who support this body, I sustain this body, and vidharayami. So I support this body, I sustain this body, iti. That's how it is. But they ashraddha they did not believe the prana, babhuvu, and they did not believe this prana out of lack of faith. So the story goes like this, that there were all these different devas, different powers, eyes, ears, nose, and all. And they started fighting with each other that I am glorious, I am better. And this story appears in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad also, where these elements were fighting. And they go to Brahmaji, and Brahmaji tells them pranam is superior. In Chandogya Upanishad, the story is given a little differently. The same, they were all fighting, the eyes, ears, nose, mind, intellect. But there it is said that each one left for a month. So the eyes left for a month. They thought, without me, the person won't be able to function. They came back. They asked, are you okay? They said, yeah, we couldn't see, but we are still okay. Same thing, the ears went for a month and nothing happened. The mind went away for a month. And when the mind came back, he said, yeah, well, we had childlike abilities, but, we are okay. So it is prana alone that is important. And we'll talk about that. And that's why the individual is called prani. Prani means one who has pranas. That's why when they die, they say, iske prana chale gaye. So prana chale gaye means the life goes. So it is the prana that maintains not only in deep sleep, but also in the waking and the dream state. And this prana is said to be the same as Hiranya Garbha, the same as Surya. And in the last mantra, we had talked about the Samashti prana, which maintains all the celestial bodies, how the sun follows its path, the moon, goes around the earth, all the planets, all the solar systems. And then there is the Vyashti prana, that is each one of us is nourished by. So the Vyashti and the Samashti are one, and we are connected with the totality. And there has to be a CEO, a boss, because of which this body is functioning. There's a very nice story. So this man went into this office. He wanted to meet the CEO. And they told him the CEO is not here. So he kept on sitting. He didn't go all day. He was sitting. CEO was inside, but he was busy. He didn't want to meet. So at the end of the day, he calls this guy in. He says, didn't they tell you that the CEO is not here? He says, yeah. He said, well, why didn't you go away? He said, because I could see that everyone is working very, very well. The secretaries, the assistant managers, even the peon. So if everything is functioning, the CEO has to be around. So I knew you are here. Just as this body is functioning very well, the eyes, the ears, there has to be a CEO, which is, of course, the Supreme Lord, functioning through the pranas. That's why the Taittiriya Upanishad says, because of fear of that prana, the wind blows. Because of fear of the prana, the rain falls. Even death is fearful of that Supreme Lord. So what the idea is that everything is functioning because of the presence of this Supreme Lord functioning through prana. And the prana is the one that connects the gross body with the subtle body. And it is the connecting factor which also connects us with the causal body. And think about it. At night we dream, right? And in the dream, maybe I go to India, maybe I go to another world, to the moon or wherever. See, I've read a book about, space travel. And then when I wake up, I'm still in my bed. I haven't gone to the moon. And who brings me back from the other worlds? The prana, because the prana is the one active. or these great rishis, they could travel to different locus. They could actually consciously travel through into the various heavens and the various worlds. And they don't wake up in a different place. They wake up in the same place, just as I don't wake up in another bed. I wake up in my own bed. So it is the prana that connects the gross, subtle, and causal body and is responsible for all of them shari functioning. And there is an ability called para sharira praveshaha. That means the ability to enter into another's body. And Shankaracharya ji had that. And some of you may have heard that story. It's a very beautiful story. But Shankaracharya ji was one day going with his disciples, and he had this argument with Mandan Mishra, who was a great ritualist, and Mandan Mishra was defeated and later on became Sureshwaracharya ji, one of his best disciples. But Mandan Mishra's wife, Bharati, said, "You have defeated my husband, you haven't defeated me." She was also a great scholar, and she engages in a beautiful debate with Shankaracharya ji. And when she finds that her views are not doing very well, she brings up worldly things, how to contact the opposite sex and conjugal bliss and, those kind of things, which Shankaracharya ji has never experienced. He was a celibate, he was a brahmachari, and he has never experienced contact with the and so she brings up those points. So he says, "Sorry, I can't argue, but give me 1 month and I'll come back and argue with you." So as they are walking, he hears that the king of that kingdom has died. So he tells his shishyas, "You keep my body safely in this cave. I will leave this body." And so the body is left, his pranas leave through the head, through the Sahasradhara chakra, and the king has just died and the Ranis are crying, and he enters his body and brings it life. And suddenly they are all happy. Oh, the king was not dead after all. Not only that, but the king becomes a great king. He used to be quite dull, but suddenly he is very bright, very intelligent, running the country beautifully. And then the enemy king attacks. And they say this king was a coward, and now he's fighting like Arjuna. What happened? How did this king suddenly become, and he's so intelligent like Brihaspati? They say something is wrong. Our king was not that. Somebody else has entered, and one of the ministers was very wise. He said, definitely somebody's subtle body has come, and that's why our king is so good, but we want to keep this king. So they tell the soldiers, go look around. If you find any body that is lying, that is dead, you burn it, so that our king cannot go back. And so the soldiers are looking, and 1 month has passed, and these devotees are worried, his shishyas, and the soldiers come to the cave and they see the body and they're about to take it and burn it, and they start praying to the Guru, "Oh, Guru Bhagwan, please come back." And Shankaracharya ji hears that, and then he leaves the body of the king, come back to his own body. And then the soldiers are surprised, but because this person is still alive, and the king, of course, dies. And, so the point is that it is the pranas that enliven the body, and there is the mukhya prana, and there are the 5 pranas. We'll be talking in more detail about the 5 pranas. We know prana, apana, vyana, samana, and udana, but we'll be covering in more detail in this particular mantra. So I just wanted to bring up the fact that the prana is the most superior, most important. The next one is long, so maybe Jayashree, you can chant. So mantra number 4. Sobhimanat urdhvam utkramata iva tasmin nuttakramatya ete tare sarva evot kramante
एवोत्क्रामन्ते
तस्मिंश्च प्रतिष्ठमाने
तस्मिंश्च प्रतिष्ठमाने
सर्व एव प्रातिष्ठन्ते
सर्व एव प्रातिष्ठन्ते
तक्षथा न तद्यथा मक्षिका
तद्यतामक्षिका
मधुकराजात्मन्
मधुकराजातं राजानं
अजानं मधुकराजानं
मधुकरराजानम्
उत्क्रामन्तम्
उत्क्रामन्तं
सर्वा एवोत्क्रामन्ते
सर्वा एवोत्क्रामन्ते
तस्मिंश्च प्रतिष्ठमाने
तस्मिंश्च प्रतिष्ठमाने
सर्वा एव प्रातिष्ठन्त
सर्व एव प्रातिष्ठन्त
एवं वाङ्मनश्चक्षुः
एवं वाङ्मनश्चक्षुः
श्रोत्रं च ते प्रीताः
श्रोत्रं च ते प्रीताः
प्राणं स्तुन्वन्ति.
प्राणं स्तुन्वन्ति.
So Saha Abhimanat. Abhimanat, we'll chant together. We did? Okay. Saha Abhimanat. Abhimanat here does not mean out of pride, but out of self-confidence. He said, I am the most supreme. So they say, you are not, I am more important. Nobody agreed with him. So Urdhva Utkramata Iva. So as though he got up to leave. Utkramata means to leave. Urdhvam. He got up and said, okay, I am leaving. So the moment the prana said, I am leaving, others also, tasmin utkramati atha, then all of them, itare, all of these others also had to get up, because once the pranas are gone, then the rest of it is of no use, eyes, ears. So if the prana leaves, they also have to leave. Means all the abilities to see, hear, the subtle body has to leave. And once the subtle body leaves, the person is dead. So the 19 aspects of the subtle body have to go when the prana goes. If the prana is gone, the person has no prana, then all the 19 have to go. So when he got up, utkramata, they also utkramante, they also get up. Tasminscha, then in that body, pratishthamane, then the prana said, okay, I'm not going, I am going to sit down. Sarva eva pratishtante, they all also sat down. So when the prana got up, they had to get up to leave. And when the prana sat down, they also sat down. How? So Shankaracharya, the Rishi gives a very beautiful example. People are the Rishi. Tad yatha makshika, just as makshika madhukar rajanam. So the queen bee, Raja here means the queen bee. Madhukar means Madhukar makshika means the honey bee. Madhukar is honey, makshika is the bee. So just as the honey bee, utkramantam, queen bee, the queen bee, utkramantam, when the queen bee leaves the hive, sarva eva utkramante, all the other bees also go. If the queen bee is no longer living in the hive, then when she leaves, all the other bees also leave, because she is the most powerful, most important. And tasminscha pratishthamane sarva eva pratisthanta. And when the queen bee settles in a new hive, all the bees follow her and settle. So the queen bee is the most important. If the queen bee leaves, all the bees leave. If the queen bee settles in a new hive, all the bees follow. So in that way, evam vanga mana chakshu shrotram. So vang is speech, organs of action. Mana is the subtle antakarna. Chakshu shrotra is the sense organs. Jate prita, they became happy that, oh, prana is not leaving. Thank God, prana is still here. We are still alive. Then what? Becoming happy, prita. pranam stunvanti. They praised the prana. They, stuti means they offered their praises. They chanted the praises of the prana. And the rest of this chapter, the next few mantras are stuti of prana. So here the prana did not leave, but eva, as though left. Just got up to leave, and immediately all the other pranas followed, because by themselves they have no ability to function, no ability to all that. So that is why that is the most important. Prana is the most important, and all the other 19 follow, all the other 14 follow the instructions of the 5 pranas. But we think, eyes, they work on their own, ears work on their own. Which God, what God? I have never seen God. There is no God. And we think that life, I can function myself fine. I don't need any God. But then what happens? Life brings some sorrow, little problem, because God wants to wake us up. So when a little problem comes, like COVID, it's not a little problem, it's a big problem, but everybody suddenly starts saying, oh God, please save us, So the thing is that we think we are, without us, this world will not function. And Gurudev, there's a very beautiful story. There was this camp in Siddhabadi, and this was in the 1960s or 70s, when they didn't have cell phones, and you had to go to the STD and book a call, and you have to book a call, and then when your call comes, then you go and take it. And so these people were going to the STD all the time. So they said, Gurudev said, why are you going? They said, our children and grandchildren are home. We don't know how they will be functioning, whether everything is okay or not. Gurudev says, he says, you are not there. They are happy. You are gone. Things are going fine. So we think that without me, kya hoga? What will happen to this world? That is all arrogance. And in this arrogance, we suffer. And there is only this illness of ego, this illness of arrogance is called bhava roga. Bhava roga means, they say bhava roga mein, I am caught in this world of disease. And who is the bhishaja? Who is the doctor of bhava roga? The guru. So we don't go to the guru, who is the doctor of this bhava roga. And what is the vaccine? Just as COVID as a vaccine, so there is Shruti is the vaccine. The scriptures is the vaccine. So the scriptures is the vaccine. The guru is the doctor. So when I'm suffering from this bhava roga, from all these sorrows, it is the guru and the scriptures will save us. And so here we see that the prana is the most important. And then in the subsequent mantras, we'll see how the prana is important, and all the other 14 worship pranas do stuti, and then how the prana divides into 5. So that will be covered in detail in the second and in the third query. So we covered 4 mantras today. We still have quite a bit of time. It went faster than I thought. So if anybody has any questions, comments, anybody would like to add anything? Anybody who has read Gurudev's comments, I did not cover them in much detail, because I thought everybody would read and come, and that's what I would request everybody to read Gurudev's commentary, because he covers it in very great detail and very beautiful language. But I don't want to repeat, so I try to get additional ideas from other commentaries and other stories and all. So anybody would like to add anything, or anything that any questions you have, either on these shlokas or anything else on these mantras? Yeah, Lata, go ahead.
Reference of prana in this particular shloka, number 4, does it reference to the breath or the life force?
Life force.
Yeah, the breath is one of the 5 pranas. There is the life force, the mukhya prana, which divides into 5.
Right.
Prana is the intake, intake of the breath and all other intake. Apana is excretion. So when you breathe in, then you breathe out. So that is prana and apana. Then intake of food is prana and excretion of the waste is apana. So prana and apana.
Right.
And samana is the digestive force, which will be covered in more detail in subsequent mantras. But in brief,
Correct.
samana is the digestive force which digests and connects a prana with apana, and whatever the utilization of food happens because of samana. So whatever proteins and carbohydrates and vitamins and all, whatever I eat, it is samana which collects it, and the waste is excreted by the apana. Then Vyana is the circulatory system, and it's not only the arteries and nerves, but there is a lot more in that, and that will be covered in subsequent mantras, where all these, there are different nadis, different channels of communication, more than the arteries and veins, which is the Vyana, which provides nutrition even to the furthest cell, even to the smallest cell of the nail. With the tip of the nail is also nourished. So that is Vyana. And then Udana is the ability, is first of all, whenever anything opposite happens, like I have taken in food which is bad and I need to throw it up, then it is Udana which is functioning, or sneezing, coughing, the opposite. And Udana, of course, it becomes most powerful when it carries the jiva after death out of this body. The jiva, the subtle body and the causal body, are carried to subsequent worlds based on my good and bad karmas. And it takes us to the appropriate place, and that will cover in a lot of detail in subsequent mantras, but that is the 5 pranas. So it is not only breath, but all of the 5.
But here in this shloka, it is mentioned the main.
The main. In this shloka, it is mukhya prana.
Life principle.
The life principle, which divides into 5. That's why he says, Panchadha pravibhajya. Having divided into 5, I am the one that sustains this body.
So without that main prana, all the 19
Yes.
Aspects of subtle body are of no use.
Right. Exactly.
Can you, with having prana and not having mind, can you still function?
Yes, because some people, when they get a stroke or when they, they are not mentally, they are mentally challenged and have very limited intellectual and mental abilities, they are still able to function. People with Down syndrome and people with mental, severe impairments, they are bedridden, or, person has had a massive stroke, his brain is gone, but he's bedridden, but he's able to function. Sometimes people last for years. So it is the prana that maintains, depending on the prarabdha of the individual, how much prarabdha that individual comes with. The prana will continue to sustain that individual till his prarabdha is exhausted. His or her prarabdha is exhausted. And when that prarabdha is exhausted, then the prana goes, and all the subtle elements and everything goes.
Yeah, you hear so much the stimuli that are brought by the sense organs. And if the mind is not available to receive that really you're not receiving that.
Yes.
Even though you see something outside, but your mind is not ready to receive.
Right.
You really don't see it.
Right. Now, that's a very good point. The mind is very important. We are not saying the mind is not important, because if you are not paying attention, like somebody will pass by, and if you're engrossed, he will say, I passed by and waved at you and you didn't even say hi. Or somebody is talking and your mind is somewhere else. So you're not, husbands are very good at that. Wife keeps talking, but husband's mind is somewhere else. So the point is that if your attention is not on what this person is saying, even though the person may be talking, the mind is required. So mind is very important. Intellect is important to judge. And then
such
memory is
people-
important.
Such people don't function as well.
Yes,
either.
Gurudev.
Not efficiently.
Yeah, Gurudev says that very well. The mind is not there; they don't function efficiently. If the three out of 5 sense organs are missing, the person cannot survive. You cannot live if your eyes, ears, and say the skin is gone. You cannot survive because the skin is gone. You're not can't touch, and you touch something hot, and you won't even know it, and it will burn the fire. So you need at least 3 out of 5 sense organs to survive. So everything is important. We are not saying they are not important. The memory is important.
But most
Sure.
important
ego.
is the prana.
The
Because
ego is
without
important. The, like ability to grasp objects, ability to walk, ability to talk. But people survive even if they can't talk. The vocal cords are gone. They are still able to function. They do this.
Would the other sense organs become more sharper?
Yes.
Is that?
Yes.
But you said 3 are really
Required.
more. 3 are needed.
At least 3. That's
for
what
sure.
even Gurudev says in his commentary, that minimum 3 are required for life. If out of 5, 3 are gone, the individual cannot survive. And that is true, like a blind person who cannot see, but his hearing becomes very sharp and his ability to touch, he can touch objects and find out, or he can hold somebody's hand and he'll know who that person is. So yes, the other sense organs become more strong.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anil, if you're saying the Mukhya Prana, is that consciousness you're talking about?
No, it is not consciousness. It is these 5 pranas together. There is a Mukhya Prana which divides into 5, which is still the pranas, but it is the consciousness functioning in the individual, through Maya, through this individual. So it is part of this. It is, you can say, the illumining principle. Hiranya Garbha, it is said to be Hiranya Garbha, it is said to be Surya. It is the enlivening factor which enlivens this body.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's not the consciousness, because consciousness doesn't do anything.
Right.
Consciousness becomes as Ishvara.
Right. When it's conditioned. Yeah.
Right.
Maya.
So it is the consciousness functioning in this individual through his subtle body, through his causal body, which is Maya, which is the 5 elements. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, it is, but it is the sentient principle which illumines this particular body. This Upanishad is very technical, has a lot of
It is very detailed.
very detailed.
To me, this Upanishad was
Yeah, it's
so scientific.
Yeah, it's very scientific, very detailed.
Prana one more time.
Ji?
Could you explain prana's 5 functions
Yeah.
one more
So
time?
one is prana is intake. Apana is excretion. Samana is digestion. Dhyana is circulation. And Udana becomes active at the time of death, which carries the subtle body to different worlds.
Sneezing.
5. Sharad, you have a question? I see your hand was raised or no? Oh, you don't have. I think that's, yeah, Carrie, go ahead.
Well, I had a question just a little bit about, whenever you take like yoga classes, they always talk about pranayama, but it's always just all these different, kind of breathing things that they do. I mean, it's all about the breath.
That is different, yeah.
Yeah, no, the breath is very, very important, because control of the breath, first of all, is important for good health, to breathe deeply in intake and output. Also, pranayam properly done helps to quieten the mind.
Yeah.
And a quiet mind can get the knowledge and ultimately meditate. That's why before meditation, we always do some breathing. If you know formal pranayam, you can do that. I don't do that. I just do anulom vilom, just breathe in and out. I haven't studied pranayama. So pranayama is very important. And before doing yoga exercises, they do pranayama. So pranayama is a very important science. And if you want to do the advanced pranayams like Bhastrika and so on, it has to be learned from a teacher. You cannot learn from the internet or on YouTube. There has to be a live teacher. So pranayam is very important. Pranayam means control of pranas. So breathing in the right way, and then regulating the breathing. Otherwise, what happens is when we get anxious, you find the breath becomes very rapid. So slow, measured breathing controls the mind and makes the mind relax and the body relax.
Raman Maharishi said, no? They are the two branches. Of the
Yeah,
center.
yeah. So
Mind and the
yeah, Chitta Vayu Vavabrat, Chit Kriya Yuta, Shakha Yordvai, Shakti Mulaka. So Raman Maharishi just says, Chitta and Vayu. Vayu means breath and Chitta means mind. Shakha Yordvai, Shakti Mulaka. They are two branches of one tree, which has two branches, and the root is
prana.
this. Root is the consciousness or Bhagwan's presence. And breath and mind are very much connected because they are two branches of the same tree. So Raman Maharishi says that. But the main prana you can say, which is God's presence, which is the divinity, which is the enlivening presence within us. So Raman Maharishi says that very well.
So at the death time, then consciousness leaves, right?
No, consciousness does
cannot
not leave because consciousness is everywhere.
Yes.
Consciousness cannot go.
Well,
It is the subtle body that is carried by Udana, subtle body along with vasanas and ignorance.
and
So
also the
19,
reflection in it.
19 plus 2. And how does the subtle body get enlivened? By the reflection of consciousness. So the reflection of consciousness is no longer there because this gross body is unable to sustain
is
the
there.
body.
It
And
is
the subtle body, the 19 plus 2 vasanas and ignorance, they leave.
even
And they are
the-
carried
even-
by Udana.
Even the reflection is there. Because otherwise the subtle body won't be there.
Right.
Along with the reflection it goes.
Along with the reflection. So the reflection also goes
Yeah.
along with that, with
Yeah.
the subtle body. Because there is no subtle body anymore to reflect the consciousness. So the consciousness doesn't go, but the pranas carry the subtle body out of this body to another world and then to a subsequent birth.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Good question. Thank you. Okay, we'll do the closing. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Guru Pyo Namaha. Hari Om. Thank you very much. Hari Om.